9. Classification Review of Programs of the Space Force. Sector 1610. Report on Range of the Future Initiative of the Space Force. Sector 1611. Space Policy Review. Sector 1612. Annual Briefing on Threats to Space Operations. Sector 1613. National Security Council Briefing on Potential Harmful Interference to Global Positioning System. Sector 1614. Non-geostationary orbit satellite constellations. Sector 1615. Briefing on Prototype Program for Multi-Global Navigation Satellite System Receiver Development. Subtitle B Defense Intelligence and Intelligence-Related Activities Sector 1621. Notification of certain threats to United States Armed Forces by foreign governments. Sector 1622. Strategy and plan to implement certain defense intelligence reforms. Sector 1623. Annual Briefing by Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency on Electronic Warfare Threat to Operations of the Department of Defense. Sector 1624. Report on Explosive Ordnance Intelligence Matters. Subtitle C Nuclear Forces Sector 1631. Participation in United States Strategic Command Strategic Deterrence Exercises. Sector 1632. Modification to requirements relating to nuclear force reductions. Sector 1633. Modifications to requirements relating to unilateral changes in nuclear weapons stockpile of the United States. Sector 1634. Deadline for reports on modification of force structure for strategic nuclear weapons delivery systems. Sector 1635. Modification of deadline for notifications relating to reduction, consolidation, or withdrawal of nuclear forces based in Europe. Sector 1636. Procurement authority for certain parts of the ground-based strategic deterrent cryptographic device. Sector 1637. Capability of B-21 bomber aircraft with long-range standoff weapon. Sector 1638. Mission Design Series popular name for ground-based strategic deterrent. Sector 1639. Prohibition on reduction of the intercontinental ballistic missiles of the United States. Sector 1640. Limitation on availability of certain funds until submission of information relating to proposed budget for nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missile. Sector 1641. Limitation on availability of certain funds until submission of information relating to nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missile. Sector 1642. Annual Certification on Readiness of Minuteman III Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles. Sector 1643. Revised Nuclear Posture Review. Sector 1644. Review of Safety, security, and reliability of nuclear weapons and related systems. Sector 1645. Long-range standoff weapon. Sector 1646. Ground-based strategic deterrent development program accountability matrices. Sector 1647. Information regarding review of Minuteman III service life extension program or options for the future of the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Force. Sector 1648. Notification regarding intercontinental ballistic missiles of China. Sector 1649. Independent review of nuclear command, control, and communications system. Sector 1650. Review of engineering and manufacturing development contract for ground-based strategic deterrent program. Sector 1651. Report on re-alerting long-range bombers. Sector 1652. Controller General study and updated report on nuclear weapons capabilities and force structure requirements. Sector 1653. Briefing on consultations with United States allies regarding nuclear posture review. Subtitle D Missile Defense Program Sector 1661. Notification of changes to non-standard acquisition and requirements processes and responsibilities of Missile Defense Agency. Sector 1662. Limitation on Missile Defense Agency production of satellites and ground systems associated with operation of such satellites. Sector 1663. Extension of period for transition of ballistic missile defense programs to military departments. Sector 1664. Directed energy programs for ballistic and hypersonic missile defense. Sector 1665. Guam Integrated Air and Missile Defense System. Sector 1666. Missile Defense Radar in Hawaii. Sector 1667. Certification required for Russia and China to tour certain missile defense sites. Sector 1668. Next generation interceptors for missile defense of the United States homeland. Sector 1669. Iron Dome short-range rocket defense system and Israeli cooperative missile defense program co-development and co-production. Sector 1670. Update of study on discrimination capabilities of the ballistic missile defense system. Sector 1671. Semi-annual updates on meetings held by the Missile Defense Executive Board. Sector 1672. Matters regarding integrated deterrence review. Sector 1673. Semi-annual notifications regarding missile defense tests and costs. Sector 1674. Report on senior leadership of Missile Defense Agency. Sector 1675. Independent study of roles and responsibilities of Department of Defense components relating to missile defense. Subtitle E Other Matters Sector 1681. Cooperative Threat Reduction Funds. Sector 1682. Modification to Estimate of Damages from Federal Communications Commission Order 20-48. Sector 1683. Establishment of office, organizational structure, and authorities to address unidentified aerial phenomena. Sector 1684. Determination on certain activities with unusually hazardous risks. Sector 1685. Study by Public Interest Declassification Board relating to certain tests in the Marshall Islands. Sector 1686. Protection of Major Range and Test Facility Base. Sector 1687. Congressional Commission on the Strategic Posture of the United States. Subtitle A Space Activities Sec. 1601. National Security Space Launch Program. A. Disclosure of National Security Space Launch Program Contract Pricing Terms. 1. In general, Chapter 135 of Title 10, United States Code, is amended by inserting after Section 2276 the following new Section 2277, Sector 2277. Disclosure of National Security Space Launch Program Contract Pricing Terms. A. In general, with respect to any contract awarded by the Secretary of the Air Force for the launch of a national security payload under the National Security Space Launch Program, not later than 30 days after entering into such a contract, the Secretary shall submit to the Congressional Defense Committees a description of the pricing terms of the contract. For those contracts that include the launch of assets of the National Reconnaissance Office, the Secretary shall also submit the pricing terms to the Congressional Intelligence Committees, as defined by Section 3 of the National Security Act of 1947, 50 U.S.C. 3003. B. Competitively sensitive trade secret data. The Congressional Defense Committees and the Congressional Intelligence Committees shall 1. Treat a description of pricing terms submitted under subsection A as competitively sensitive trade secret data, and 2. Use the description solely for committee purposes, subject to appropriate restrictions to maintain the confidentiality of the description. C. Rule of construction. For purposes of Section 1905 of Title 18, a disclosure of contract pricing terms under subsection A shall be construed as a disclosure authorized by law. 2. Conforming amendment. The table of sections at the beginning of such chapter is amended by inserting after the item relating to Section 2276 the following new item: 2277. Disclosure of National Security Space Launch Program Contract Pricing Terms. B. Policy. With respect to entering into contracts for launch services during the period beginning on the date of the enactment of this Act and ending September 30, 2024, it shall be the policy of the Department of Defense and the National Reconnaissance Office to 1. Use the National Security Space Launch Program to the extent practical to procure launch services only from launch service providers that can meet federal requirements with respect to delivering required payloads to reference orbits covered under the requirements of Phase 2 and 2.